begin with a chant. Om Partaya Pratipotitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Yasena Gratitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Ritavarshinim Bhagavatim Astadasadhyayinim Amba Tvam Anusandadami Bhagavat Gite Bhavat Peshinim. Om. O Bhagavad Gita, with which Partha Arjuna was illumined by the Lord Narayana himself, and which was composed within the Mahabharata by the ancient sage Vyasa. O Divine Mother, the destroyer of rebirth, the shower of the nectar of Advaita, and consisting of 18 chapters. Upon thee, O Gita, O affectionate mother, I meditate. So let us begin with a guided meditation to calm and center the mind. The meditation that Vivekananda gave during his Raja Yoga classes of mindfulness meditation, ancient Sankhya Vedanta meditation, calming the lake of the mind. So if you're seated in a chair, make sure that your spine is straight, your feet are firmly planted on the ground, and your hands are held as Vivekananda's hands behind me. Palms turned upward and held loosely in the lap. Let's close our eyes and begin by taking in 3 deep breaths, breathing in deeply and exhaling completely. Picture the mind as a calm lake stretched before you. Let your mind drift. See how thoughts come and go as bubbles, rising and breaking on the surface, becoming ripples that are ever widening circles. Make no effort to control your thoughts, but watch them. Follow them in imagination as they rise, break, and float away. I am not the mind. I can see that I am thinking. I am watching my mind act. Hold fast to the idea. I am the witness, watching my mind drift. The mind is not I. Watch the mind as a thing entirely apart from yourself. Identify yourself with God, never with the mind or matter. Be the witness. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto us all. So today's topic is I am in all hearts. This is the second half of the 15th chapter of the Gita. And for those of you who missed the first talk on the Gita, the 15th chapter, we'll do a quick review and then we'll slide right into our subject for today. Chapter 15 opens with Sri Krishna comparing this universe to the Ashwata tree. But why a tree? And why an upside down tree? Why is it rooted in heaven and its branches reaching toward the earth? How strange. Because only the branches, the effect, this cosmos is visible. Its roots, the cause, Brahman, remains invisible. In other words, from Brahman, the unmanifest, this world of Maya becomes manifest. Without Brahman, there can be no Maya. But Brahman can certainly exist without Maya. From the one, the many, with all its differences, have come. And from this imagery, we see how this phenomenal world, this universe, has its origin in Saguna Brahman, which is Brahman with Maya. And this Aswata tree then symbolizes our human condition. We take it a step further. We as individual souls live in ignorance, but in truth, this world in which we live and are rooted in is Brahman. Our true original nature is divine, but our individual ignorance has veiled that truth. And this ignorance is due to Maya, composed of the three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. And while we live in ignorance, we're subject to the gunas, and we're bound by the law of karma. Every cause has an effect, physical and mental. And so this Asvata tree, though rooted in Brahman, is for us who remain in ignorance, a world of samsara, a ceaseless cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. So the Asvata holds within itself an apparent contradiction. This imperishable tree of samsara is rooted from above in Brahman, yet Asvata literally means that which lives only for tomorrow. Asvata represents Maya, universal ignorance, which is beginningless and endless, but each of us can individually end our ignorance by attaining illumination. And at that time, the Aswata tree will then disappear when we experience Brahman. The Aswata's symbolism is a graphic illustration and teaching for us. Its branches extend downward to this universe. And those who are on a spiritual path and seek self-realization and tranquility, the Sattva Guna, are the Aswata's upper branches. You all are on those upper branches. And those who are bound by a sense light of passion, rajas or lethargy, tamas, are its lower limbs. Its buds produce the fruits of our senses. Its leaves are the Vedas, which nourish and protect this tree of creation. And its huge network of downward roots represents the law of karma. And those of you who are familiar with the banyan tree know these roots are enormous. And that is what protects the tree by forming dharma and adharma from its law of cause and effect. But the seer reveres this cosmic creation. Why? Because he or she sees its essence is rooted in Brahman. For without Brahman, it could not exist. And that is a reality upon which it rests. And this was the great teaching that Sri Ramakrishna gave his Vedanta guru, Totapuri. When you read his life, you will see the difference between what Totapuri had practiced and attained, and then after coming into contact with Sri Ramakrishna, it opened up his vision even further. And in truth, Vivekananda explains, all creation passing through this round of birth, death, and rebirth will sooner or later become free. No one can be lost. Nothing can come to destruction. Everything must come up. And that is a wonderful, positive, philosophical truth that all humankind is born for perfection. There is no eternal damnation. And so if that is so, we might ask, what is the use of our struggling? Vivekananda answers his own question. In the first place, the struggle is the only means that will bring us to the center. And in the second place, we do not know why we struggle. We have to. Of thousands of men, some are awakened to the idea that they will become free. The vast masses of mankind are content with material things. But there are some who awake and want to get back, who have had enough of this playing down here. And these struggle consciously, while the rest do it unconsciously. In other words, even those who are not striving for illumination, whatever path they go, upward, downward, seemingly outward into sense pleasure, all of these experiences are teaching them. And they are learning these lessons by hard mistakes, but that advances their evolution, you see. Those who struggle and succeed are two classes of seers. First, for the Brahmagyani, who wields the axe of non-attachment, and that was Totapuri, the nominal world vanishes and Brahman alone remains. The Brahmagyani, what does the Brahmagyani experience? He or she peers beneath the surface life and knows all is not, God is. In other words, all of this is an illusion. God alone exists. However, some Brahmagyanis go even further, as Swami Vivekananda and the other direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna did. As Vigyanis, they then see all this creation is rooted in and verily Brahman. And there is no need to cut the Aswata tree, for Brahman was never lost sight of as its essence. To such a soul, this manifested universe is the immortal Brahman only. God is all. So to give an insight into the realizations of these two classes of knowers, of seers, the Brahmagyani would see you and me as people, as so many glass houses with the light of the Atman within. But the glass house is something to be negated as Maya, this body-mind complex. The Vigyani, however, would see you and me as glass houses. But even the glass house is an appearance of the light of consciousness. For the Vigyani sees form as Brahman, a richer experience, but one that can only be first preceded by the process of negation. Neti neti atma. All is not, God is. And that is what completely purifies the mind in order to correctly assimilate the other experience. To transcend the law of karma, it's important to realize our bondage is caused by this little I of ours, the sense that I am the doer. I do this, I do that, this is mine. So the aspirant strives to bypass the ego and identify with the eternal witness of one's thoughts and actions. We call it Krishna consciousness, Buddha nature, Christ consciousness, the Divine Mother. It is the pure consciousness within which is our true nature. So then how do we go about doing that? What do we mean by that practice? We don't always know when we're meditating, but we know when we're praying. See? So without a teacher, we can be easily misled into thinking that we are in meditation. The path of Jnana Yoga, one particular aspect of that is to step back from our ego consciousness, as it were, and allow our higher mind to begin to watch over our lower mind, just as you did in the opening guided meditation. This calming the lake of the mind, this mindfulness meditation. And what part of the mind was watching the lower mind? It was our buddhi. The chitta is the lower mind. That is the mind stuff. That's where all the whirlpools of the mind are taking place. Thoughts, desires, emotions, pictures, mental pictures, all of that is taking place in the chitta. The buddhi is a discriminating faculty. And it is that part of the mind wherein spiritual experience takes place. And it's not up here. The buddhi is in the heart. That is the faculty of the mind that the scriptures, both Christian and Hindu, describe or refer to when they speak of placing the mind in the heart. That is the seat of consciousness within us, one of the seats of consciousness, one of the safest seats of consciousness to meditate upon, and usually given to us by our gurus. We may ask, is then the buddhi, that part of my mind that was watching the lower mind, the same as the eternal witness? No, but it is pointing to that which is also called the unseen seer, the eternal witness. In other words, we can never see the eternal witness, but we can dissolve into it and become one with it. The eternal witness is never an object of perception, not even in meditation. It remains unseen. It is our true nature. It is that which in Nirvikalpa Samadhi we become one with. We dissolve into that. And when we begin to bring forward and position our higher mind to watch over our lower mind and tendencies, that is called the mindful mind, in which we become centered. So in that way, we are able to gently guide our thoughts and actions to higher ground. So this opening guided meditation is usually done in the first 5 or 10 minutes of meditation. We don't simply sit down and yank the mind into the heart. We can't. We have to watch the mind and watch its movements become less and less. And then we can gather the forces of the mind and bring the mind into the heart, where the chosen ideal is seated. So by tying the mind, our awareness, to the feet of the Lord, we become more and more identified with the center of our being. And we are then able to act without attachment. And so that is why meditation is given as a discipline at the beginning of the day. As someone asked me yesterday, what do you gain by meditation? Well, there's a saying, if you begin your day with prayer, your day won't unravel. And so with meditation, when you become centered and at the very beginning of the day, that current takes you through the day. And then at the end of the day, when you end it with meditation, you begin to develop a palpable current within yourself. But the key, the secret, is regularity of practice. It's like bookends. When you do it in the beginning of the day and at the end of the day, that current is something that can be palpably felt. And usually, for those who are beginners, you start where you can. You don't trouble yourself over what you can't do. If you can only sit quietly for 10 minutes, do that. And train your mind to do that with regularity. 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes at the end of the day. And then if you can, increase that time to 15 minutes, then 20 minutes, a half an hour. Once you can build that time up to an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening, you will feel that current. And that is something that our teachers tell us, including Swami Swahananda, who's the founder of this center. He said that is the key. No matter how poorly you meditate, and meditation is used very, very loosely. Meditation is really one-pointed concentration. Most of us are trying to meditate. That's the better word for it. Practicing pratyahara. But that in itself builds that current within us. So then there's the path of Raja Yoga. It strives to help us give up strong likes and dislikes. And why is this so important? You know, I know what I love. I don't want to give that up. But by giving up strong likes and dislikes, we release ourselves from the ups and downs of life, this yo-yo-like reactions to turbulent emotions that disturb our equanimity. Patanjali tells us in the Yoga Sutras 2 and 3 of the first chapter, he says, Yoga chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga is the control of the vrittis, the urges, the thoughts, or tendencies that arise out of the chitta. And that is what you were doing in the guided meditation. By watching the vrittis become embarrassed and they gradually subside. It's like a child who's having a tantrum. The child just gives up after a while. And then in Sutra 3, Patanjali tells us, Tada drashtu swarupe avasthanam. At that time, the seer, the experiencer, rests in his own state. But that's a very high state. It's a very, very high state. It takes time, it takes years of practice, regularity of practice to attain that state. And that is what is called samadhi. Then there's a path of bhakti yoga, which is an easier path. But in our spiritual lives, we use all of these yogas. The path of bhakti yoga, explained by Swami Pravrajika, he says, when you go to meditate or pray, think of that living presence. When you are walking or working, again, think of that living presence. Try to do this for 5 minutes, then increase that time as though your chosen ideal is with you. You see, you're working for your chosen ideal. Your chosen ideal is seated in the seat next to you as you're driving. You take your chosen ideal with you wherever you go. He said, try to do this for 5 minutes, then increase that time. At long last, it grips you. That is how to proceed. So these methods help us to understand the Aswata tree of creation, this phenomenal world, and to search and seek the root of that tree, Brahman, which nourishes the entire tree. The state of realization is revealed in verse 6 of the 15th chapter. And similar verses are found in the Katha, the Mundaka, and the Svetasvatara Upanishads. It goes, him the sun does not illumine, nor the moon, nor the stars, nor the lightning, nor verily fires kindled upon earth. He is the one light that gives light to all. He shining, everything shines. This is the Atman. The nature of the self-luminous reality, the light of the Atman that shines in this universe. By that light, we perceive, we think, we do. Without that light, we can do nothing. We ended the last talk with Krishna proclaiming the essence of Vedanta in verse 7. Part of myself is the God within every creature, he said. Keeps that nature eternal, yet seems to be separate. And this statement in itself is nothing less than the proclamation of the divine nature in every human being, in you and in me. The eternal has become embodied in the human body. We embody that which never dies, though there is the death of the physical body. Vivekananda made this truth ring when he spoke the immortal words. Each soul is potentially divine. The goal of life is to manifest this divinity within. Now we go on to verses 8 and 10 of the 15th chapter. Krishna speaks to us. When the Lord puts on a body or casts it from him, he enters or departs, taking the mind and senses away with him. As the wind steals perfume out of the flowers, watching over the ear and the eye and presiding there behind touch and taste and smell, he is also within the mind. He enjoys and suffers things of the senses. Dwelling in flesh or departing, or one with the gunas, knowing their moods and motions, he is invisible, always to the ignorant. But his sages see him with the eye of wisdom. So then what happens at death? The physical body is shed, but that was not the actual enjoyer during one's lifetime. It was the subtle body, which is the vehicle of the soul's mind and character. While living, the mind is the coordinator of the five senses, which are the five doors of our perception to experience this universe. In other words, the subtle body, not the physical body, is the actual enjoyer during a person's life. It also is the repository of all our samskaras, all of our tendencies, produced by thought and action from this life and from previous lives, which explains some of the times when people have phobias, you see, and they don't know what caused those phobias. It could be an accident from a previous life, falling off a cliff, fear of heights. It could be any number of experiences in this life itself, samskaras. Samskaras take place when we act. For example, if someone offends us and we get angry, every time that person's face comes into our memory, it arouses that vritti of anger until we begin to be called an angry person. You see, and that's character. That character is formed by our samskaras. So we must be very careful what we say and what we do, because that has a strong effect on shaping our character. So this subtle body is what transmigrates, forming new physical embodiment in the next life. Swami Pravrajika explains in his Gita commentary, whatever knowledge or spiritual growth we achieve in one lifetime is stored in the mind and determining our character accompanies us to our next birth. However, anything else we achieve on earth, name, fame, wealth, we cannot carry with us. So it's those internal qualities that we carry with us. But needless to say, an illumined soul whose samskaras have been burnt with the knowledge of Brahman is not reborn unless by conscious choice, and then as a perfected soul. And Swami Ranganathananda once said he wanted to be reborn to convey the teachings of Vivekananda and Vedanta. See, he was an illumined soul, so he has that choice. When Sri Krishna says he is invisible always to the ignorant, what does he mean? But to the illumined, that reality which is always there within all of us becomes living and remains living. Swami Pravrajika said in his Gita commentary, those who through sattva attain illumination while living or at the moment of death have a very, very special passing. Illumined souls who have the vision of God live in that vision. If they talk, it is only of God, nothing else. Their consciousness of this world becomes obliterated, and there remains only God, one existence. Though they may at some time return to normal consciousness, when death approaches, they again have the vision of God and live in that right up to the moment of death. And this is something that I have witnessed. I've been blessed to witness that. And also blessed to witness the deaths of wonderful devotees who at the very end have that realization of their chosen ideal. Verse 11, Sri Krishna speaks, yogis who have gained tranquility through the practice of spiritual disciplines behold him in their own consciousness. But those who lack tranquility and discernment will not find him, even though they may try hard to do so. When Sri Krishna says yogis who have gained tranquility behold him in their own consciousness, what does he mean? We find this truth that in every act of cognition within us, there is the presence of consciousness, which is God. In the Kena Upanishad, we read a beautiful passage, chapter 1, verses 1 through 2. At whose behest does the mind think? Who bids the body live? Who makes the tongue speak? Who is that effulgent being that directs the eye to form and color and the ear to sound? The self is the ear of the ear, the mind of the mind, the speech of the speech. He is also breath of the breath and eye of the eye. Now, this is an actual experience. Those who meditate on chosen ideal, when that ideal becomes living in one's heart, one feels that their eyes are love eyes. They are looking through the eyes of their chosen ideal. They are hearing through the ear of their chosen ideal. In other words, their perceptions are uplifted and made luminous. Just as when a seer sees you or me, he sees much more clearly. He sees through the eye of the spirit. Sometimes that eye penetrates and we feel that he or she is watching the mind and knows the intricacies of the mind. But then also that seer perceives the chosen ideal within the people around him or her. You see? So the main thing is that these revelations are practices. They form the practices by which we realize their truth. The power by which we're able to cognize something, to be aware of it, is the consciousness within us. Only we're unaware of that. We think, I am thinking, I am seeing. We get mixed up with the object of our perception. See? And that is our mistake of ignorance, of our ignorance. So it's a practice we have to develop within ourselves. Vedanta says that consciousness is God. It can only be seen if God allows, you see? So we cannot grasp illumination. We do the best we can. We practice what our guru tells us. We try to do it the very best every day. But that which is beyond cause and effect can never be attained by our little practices. It's the grace of God that comes. And those who are illumined will never say, I have attained. I am this, I am that. No, they will say through the grace, through my guru's grace, through Ramakrishna's grace, that experience come. Sri Ramakrishna gave the illustration of a police sergeant who makes his nightly rounds with his lantern. He said, no one sees his face, but with the help of the light, the sergeant sees everybody's face. And others too can see one another. If you want to see the sergeant, however, you must pray to him, the sergeant. That is that awareness, that self within, our chosen ideal. Sir, please turn the light in your own face. Let me see you. And in the same way, you must pray to God, O Lord, be gracious and turn the light of knowledge on thyself, that I may see thy face. So it is grace. Similarly, when one attains knowledge of the Atman, the consciousness within the human form, he or she sees one consciousness everywhere. The one consciousness has become the universe and its living beings and the 24 cosmic principles. But the manifestations of divine power are different in different beings. That is what Sri Ramakrishna tells us. Swami Prabhavananda explains, therefore, when we go to meditate, let us think we are trying to be conscious of God, and that even the power that tries is God. That power of consciousness, let us try to feel its presence. It goes on. Most aspirants feel that when they think of God or pray to God, he seems so far away. But in reality, he is so near. The main thing is to try to feel his nearness. Try to feel his living presence in our own consciousness. We must try to feel this all the time and pray that he may become revealed to us. See, feeling takes us where thought cannot, Vivekananda once said. So it is that feeling, spiritual imagination. Now we come to verses 12 through 15. Sri Krishna speaks to us. The light that lives in the sun, lighting all the world, the light of the moon, the light that is in the fire, know that light to be mine. My energy enters the earth, sustaining all that lives. I become the moon, giver of water and sap, to feed the plants and the trees. Flame of life in all, I consume the many foods, turning them into strength that upholds the body. I am in all hearts, I give and take away. I take away knowledge and memory. I am all that the Vedas tell. I am the teacher, the knower of Vedanta. So Sri Krishna declared, the light lighting all the world, know that light to be mine. The same light that Christ referred to when he stated, when I am in the world, I am the light of the world. Same consciousness of God present within everyone and everything. And that also pervades this universe. And this consciousness is undivided. So that which makes us aware of the sun, moon, and fire is the same light of consciousness that makes them shine. And that light is the light of the Atman in each of us. When Sri Krishna says, my energy enters the earth, sustaining all that lives, it's a wonderful truth. Because it is telling us God is both transcendent and immanent. Sri Krishna, as the personal God, further claims that he is the power of digestion. Swami Ranganathananda tells us, it is his energy that is in our digestive system, making for the digestion of food. And thus, so concrete is the expression of that reality. We live in and through him every minute. Swami Pravrajika. Wherever there is any life, there is God, he tells us. He is present in every experience, whether conscious, subconscious, or unconscious. However, his presence is not to be confused with pantheism, the doctrine that equates God with the universe and its phenomena. Swami Vivekananda explained, first realize all is not, God is. Then later we'll experience God is all. First, we must learn to discriminate and realize neti neti atma, not this, by denying the appearances, this world illusion, for the reality. Then the vision opens up further. It is all this, iti iti. At last, through sadhana, we're able to see the world appearance. You, me, a pot, a tree, as Brahman. Otherwise, we mix up the levels of reality and develop a confused understanding of what is real and unreal. For those who are illumined can never take a wrong step. God is all. It is not simply a thought, word, or action itself that is manifestation of the divine, but the presence and the power behind all these, as well as the entire world appearance of name and form, is Brahman. But again, this is an actual experience. Sri Krishna tells us, I am in all hearts. Here he means, I to be the inner onlooker, the witness. But this raises a seeming contradiction. There is only one source for both good and bad. Swami Prabhupada explains, though the self dwells in the hearts of all, some individuals have knowledge and others ignorance. Sri Krishna says that God is the cause of that. But how can that be? He goes on, good and bad actions are due to the way we live our life, but we cannot perform actions at all unless we are alive. And we are only alive due to the presence of God, that awareness. Pure consciousness, Brahman, the underlying reality of the world of Maya, which includes all living beings. Swami Ranganathananda gives the analogy of pure consciousness to solar energy so that we can better understand this. Flowers, food, dirt, filth, all are solar energy, you see? All is Brahman, yes, all is Brahman, in the way that all is solar energy. Then we may ask, if God is doing everything, then am I not responsible for my bad actions? Our teachers tell us. Only if we are aware of that, aware that God is the doer. But such awareness arises only in higher states of consciousness. So let us not fool ourselves. Again, when we are illumined, we can never take a wrong step. Now verses 16 through 18, Krishna speaks to us. There are two kinds of personality in this world, the mortal and the immortal. The personality of all creatures is mortal. The personality of God is said to be immortal. It is the same forever. But there is one other than these, the impersonal being who is called the Supreme Atman. He is the unchanging Lord who pervades and supports the three worlds. And since I, Krishna tells us, the Atman, transcend the mortal and even the immortal, I am known in this world and in the Vedas as a supreme reality. So Sri Krishna is explaining to us that there are two beings called Purusha in the world. One is the Jiva, the ordinary human being, you and I, who has an individualized consciousness with a mind that is ever changing and thinks I am a separate being and is ultimately perishable. And the second Purusha, with a capital P, is the personal God, Brahman associated with Maya, the avatar, the Ishvara. Unlike an ordinary jiva who is a slave of Maya, the personal God is the master of Maya. With his divine power, called Maya Shakti, he creates, sustains, and destroys the universe. He is immortal. Swami Prabhupada explains, the personal God, or Ishvara, is associated with the universal energy, whereas an individual being is associated with only a part of that energy. When Sri Krishna says, but there is one other than these, here he refers to the Supreme Self, the innermost consciousness in all. This Atman is one with Brahman, and as such pervades the universe, Jiva and the personal God. We are the whole of infinite reality. In this great Vedanta philosophy, that is the essence. We not are small part. We embody the whole of that infinite reality. This Atman is one with Brahman, and as such pervades the universe, Jiva, and personal God. The Supreme Brahman and Ishvara primordial power, are one and the same. Sri Ramakrishna used to show they are identical by giving the example of the snake at rest, the Atman, and the same snake wriggling, Ishvara. Nitya, the absolute, as Brahman itself, also finds expression in the world as Leela, a divine play. See? Sri Ramakrishna said, you can never think of the one without the other. They are like the gem and its brilliance. One cannot think of the brilliance without the gem, or of the gem without its brilliance. Again, it is like the snake and its wriggling motion. One cannot think of the wriggling motion without the snake, or of the snake without its wriggling motion. It is the primordial power that has become the universe and its living beings and the 24 cosmic principle. It is a case of involution and evolution. Now, these are very, very high concepts. They are meant to be meditated upon, read and reread, investigated, see. But from this, we grasp that we are the inheritors of a sublime philosophy and practice. Krishna says, I, the Atman, transcend the mortal and even the immortal. In spiritual life, we begin by thinking of God as separate from ourselves. We have a shrine in our home, and on that, an image or a photo of our chosen ideal. And we sit before it and look at our chosen ideal. Then we begin to feel personal God within our heart. We take that form of God within our heart, a spiritual heart, and meditate upon that. And as we evolve further, the personal God gradually melts into the impersonal, the higher self. Then one day, the personal God vanishes and Brahman alone remains. Swami Brahmananda, in The Eternal Companion, explains this process so beautifully. He says, as you meditate on your chosen ideal, think of him as bright and effulgent, and that everything shines because of his light. Think of him as living and conscious. As you continue thus, the form of your chosen ideal will gradually melt into the formless, into the infinite. Then will follow a vivid sense of the living presence until finally the eye of wisdom will open and the infinite will be directly perceived. Ah, that is another realm, far beyond this universe. He goes on. After this experience, the universe appears as nothing. The mind is dissolved and you experience savikalpa samadhi. This leads gradually to the realization of the nirvikalpa samadhi, absolute union with God. This experience is beyond all thought and speech. There is nothing to be seen, nothing to be heard. All is infinite silence. It is beyond duality and non-duality. So thus, by meditating upon and worshiping the personal God, we are also meditating upon and actually worshiping the Atman, which that personal God symbolizes. Sri Krishna points us out in the following verses, which end chapter 15. He speaks to us. He who is free from delusion and knows me as the supreme reality knows all that can be known. Therefore, he adores me with his whole heart. This is the most sacred of all truths I have taught you. He who has realized it becomes truly wise. The purpose of his life is fulfilled. And so, dear friends, to try to assimilate these teachings let us end with a guided meditation on Godness. Let us close our eyes, sit straight, spine straight, hands held loosely in our lap as Vivekananda is doing, and begin by taking in 3 deep breaths, breathing in deeply and exhaling completely to calm the mind. Everything. God is everything. Everything we see, feel, hear, and touch is a manifestation of God. The sun, moon, grass, trees, people, things, everything of this world is a manifestation of God. Kabir sings, all that exists art thou. What does that mean? All that we perceive is. Everything has a presence, and that presence is God. Let us try to feel the presence of God. Everything I feel is you, my beloved. I feel my body as your temple. I feel your presence pervading my body. You abide within me, the breath of my breath. I feel the sensation of my feet touching the floor. You are there. I feel your presence. And the sensation of my hands touching is your presence. You are there, touching me. Everything I feel, touch, see, taste, hear is you. The ceiling above my head, the floor beneath my feet, the room, the people in the room. Everything that is you. Feel the presence of your beloved as the presence of everything. With eyes closed, feel the body is. The ceiling is. The room is. My beloved. Beyond the room, the garden is. The street is. The city is. The country is. The earth is thou, my beloved. Feel the godness, the presence of your beloved that pervades everything. That presence is the ocean of consciousness in whom we live, move, and have our being. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto us all.